If they cannot be the model that inspires her imitation, if she insists on being so much like them that she weakens their claim to singularity, then she and others like her must die so as to eliminate all models of worship and governance that would rival their own. The pagan's religion emerges thereby as a sham, their idols simply images of themselves, totems of political worship. These men kill saints with their bare hands, we are told, and delight in it. And for this crime, they will suffer eternally, the text tells us, under 1,000 devils. So the world that we live in appears always as larger and more menacing than we could possibly imagine. One religion up against another, unable to establish its own brand of sovereignty and marked by unavoidable conflict. Even eternal punishment takes place within this type of social setting, the dead piled upon the dead under 1,000 devils, the text says. This life, therefore, is but a foretaste of what is to come. So the mimetic cycle gets even worse, you could say, in the afterlife. Faith's defiant stance is hardly welcomed by her own people in Agen either, at least not at first. The Agenais are easily impressed by political power, and they urge the pagan rulers to discipline the young girl, warning their rulers that they will covet soon everything that she is about to give up, and if she keeps it, she will of course undo them completely. Her noble family, however, has always supported the people in the community. She is one of the scions of the community, the nobility, as befitting such a family in a gift economy. But Faith's abandonment of her political beliefs involves as well a relinquishing of her own family destiny and its responsibilities. The pagans agree that they cannot tolerate individuals who relinquish hereditary duties, and they urge Dacian, who's the real bad guy in the story, to slice the girl's throat or risk losing their hold on legitimacy, power, and the right to life. The citation is, and you, this is what the Agenais, the people of Agen, are saying to their rulers, and you will all end up dead and humiliated if you do not bleed her brain as you did with Saint Felix. This public call to murder is, of course, the cry of the mob, the incitement to sacrificial violence, but it is also a knowing warning that sovereignty itself is nothing more than a theatrical pantomime. Should Dacian fail to follow their wishes, his power will crumble, and his bogus gods will go down with him. So far, all agree that Faith must die, each from their own perspective, but no one is as keen to die as Faith. After her arrest, she raises her voice against her persecutors, calls openly for death, and begs God to send relief and take her soul. Decapitation follows an unsuccessful grilling. She is saved by angels, which is also odd, that they come down and save her only to have her head chopped off. Upon which the attitude of the people suddenly reverts to mourning, and all calls for violence are forgotten. They sigh as they watch her burning, then turn on the rulers once they have witnessed her death. The mob acts here at one and the same time as the voice of the prosecution and the voice of the defense. They make and support the initial accusation that Faith is undermining social structure and that her defiance will lead to social disruption. Then they sanctify her death by reinstantiating the sacred in the form of her body and proceed to turn on their own sovereign. In other words, they call for her sacrifice, then close ranks around the dead body. From this point on, there is no further question of the saint's murder being an isolated phenomenon. The slaughter that follows actualizes the mob's worst suppositions, with rivers of blood and unburied bodies. All that they had predicted, had Faith lived, actually comes true with Faith's death. As long as her body lies unburied and unprotected, the people await with fear a renewed outbreak of violence. Now, the role that God plays in this cycle of violence is muted but not inconsequential. Though Girard's later work, especially from the 1970s onwards, focuses more on the sacrificial figure of Jesus Christ as the victim who proclaims his innocence and thereby undoes the myth of the solitary victim at whose feet is laid the social crisis, this pattern does not exactly fit this tale of sacrifice, nor does it fit most of the medieval tales of sacrifice, I must say. It is God, after all, who sent his son to earth to experience the sacrificial death, and God, however you spin it, who is somewhat complicit with the mechanism unleashed in this tale through mimetic rivalry. Though the death of the victim initially calms the violence, dependent, of course, on the safe burial of the sacred body, the threat of more of the same is palpable from this moment on in the text. The god of this tale is passive yet curiously engaged as a spectator rather than a clear arbiter of justice, and this emerges in the manner in which he is addressed. Like the courtly lady of troubadour poetry, several decades before her first official appearance in such courtly poetry, which does not yet exist, he is addressed as a donna, that is the courtly lady, a superior presence whose every whim becomes law and whose desires are never expressly enunciated. In lines 230 to 235, for example, Faith has just spent her first night in prison after having been beaten very badly earlier that evening. When called upon now to renounce her false beliefs, having learned her lesson, she instead recites the following incantation. I want to get closer to my Lord. If I do not possess him, I cannot be cured. I love nothing so much as him and cannot lie about it. It is with him that I want to laugh and take my pleasure. With little or no manipulation, this passage could have been inserted into the middle of almost any standard 12th century love song. And the same could be said for Faith's second declaration of love, 100 lines later. He is the one I would take as my spouse, no matter what you put me through today, for to me he is beautiful and loving. So this donna position that God has been operating in will soon be taken up by Faith after her death, as she becomes for her followers the intermediary between their needs and the God to whom they pray. Calling her explicitly their donna, the people laud her power of intercession, claiming that she can cure whatever ails you. And I'll cite one particular little anecdote in the story, which is line 445. Girard, a badly tonsured monk, took out the eyes of his best friend, Girard. Then, a year later, God returned sight to Girard through the intercession of Saint Faith. If a man comes to Faith, to the saint, blind or dumb, of course there's a wordplay constant between faith and faith, that's the name of the saint. If a man comes to her, blind or dumb, or with an ailment that greatly afflicts him, or if he is held in prison or in the ruins of a war, provided that he stretches out before her, regardless of whether he is young or old, joys and blessings will always thereafter rain upon him. So now let us pray, my lady, that you come to our aid. The association here between acts of violence, warfare, and the devotion to the saint is not incidental. Faith is clearly one who was always associated with rivalry and its consequences, and this could not be any clearer than in the fate of her corpse. According to a 9th century legend, her body was stolen from its grave in Agen in order to be incorporated into the sacred space of the Abbey of Conques, one of the largest pilgrimage churches in the south. This theft, performed by monks, which resulted in the building of one of the jewels of pilgrimage architecture, involved monks stealing from monks in the interests of the Once again, the mimetic energies produced by a state of sanctity overflow any text that tries to contain it. And it is with such a state of crisis that the author ends his Vida. Abandoning this holy saint altogether and defying generic expectations, he turns his attention at the end of the text back to the bloodshed that the city of Agen experiences after the murder of the saint. Such a dispiriting ending frankly mystifies. Why focus on destruction and disgust rather than exult over the final victory of the saint, as you would expect, and as most saints' lives do? Here's a sampling of the text's closing stanza. Only a madman would take the trouble to seek to better his family's fortunes by doing evil. God made it that hardly a day goes by that the sons of one of them don't attack the sons of the other. So Dacian, the real bad guy, has been killed, and now his two sons, of course, have turned on each other and are decimating themselves and their line. Blood flows from their necks. There's lots of blood flowing from necks. He loves that image. Blood flows from their necks, and there they are, dead upon the straw, the two kings, each wrapped in a sheet. God burned that family like a fire burns a torch. Never will their remains be seen. If they ended up slaughtering each other, that shouldn't really upset you, for it doesn't bother me a bit.